Internationally, there are a lot of laws out there that are supposed to be international, defined by treaties governing intellectual property. We talked somewhat about intellectual property. What is it again? Remind us. Matt, what's intellectual property?
Just anything a company owns that may be worth value, but not physical.
Does it have to be a company?
Well, any entity.
Any entity. Anything that intangible stuff, right? Ideas, creative works, media. Good. Copyright law is meant to enforce your claim on the value of those things, and also to limit the distribution of those things without your approval. Does that make sense? These are different examples of intellectual property laws. Let's talk about each of them in turn. A patent is very strict. It gives you an exclusive right to your intellectual property. It's limited. It's limited, and it's shorter than most of the other coverages. It is novel, useful, or non-obvious inventions. Who do you apply to get a patent?
Patent office.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the patent office. Yeah, the patent office. Very good. The government is supposed to catalog all of these things so that they don't conflict with each other. So that if one person has a patent for a certain type of invention, nobody else can file a similar patent that doesn't inherently change that idea, because then otherwise you'd be stepping on each other and replicating the same things, and your patent would be pointless and worthless. As soon as it's been granted, it's published. So even though everybody else has the plans to it and see how you did it and can reverse engineer it, they can't do it. They can't sell anything with it. They can't incorporate those things into their systems without paying you royalties that you agree on. Trademarks, little different. A trademark protects something that affects the reputation of an organization. Usually, this is a corporation or a company. It's rare to find individuals that have trademarks. Can anyone give me an example of a trademark?
Along the bottom of the screen there.
This one right here, right? Mm-hmm. Trademark graphic, sometimes even trademark fonts, right? Recent interesting trademark rulings had to do with a color scheme. Had to actually do with the pattern of colors inside a given brand. Anyone think of what that one was? Burberry?
Oh,
Yeah,
the plaid.
The plaid. They were using a distinctive set plaid, and their claim was that plaid in that color scheme in that format is us. Everybody sees it. They know that it's us. Anyone, even if there's a logo on that bag that's somebody else's logo, they know that that's our bag, so those people are ripping off our goodwill. And the court looked at it both ways. They said, claiming a color, you're asking a lot here, you know? I'm not quite sure what the outcome was of that, but I thought it was a very interesting case. And it was followed right on the heels, so to speak, of a set of footwear that has a distinctive color scheme on the sole of the shoes. I don't know. I think it was orange soles. Help me out here, Brent. You got Google?
I was doing the Burberry shirt.
Okay, all right, yeah. Again, they're going for the color scheme in the location. So we see those a lot. And some of them are actually claiming copyright infringement more than trademark. And some of them want to go for patent. It's very interesting. Trademarks most often are standalone kinds of things. There's a trademark right there. The graphic of the Starbucks girl. Nike swoosh is a good one. Anyone ever see Coming to America? Eddie Murphy?
Yes.
What was what's that? McDougal's. They have the golden arches. I have the golden arcs, right? Yeah. Good. Again, must be registered with the government, and it has to be distinctive enough that it couldn't be mistaken for anything else. That it is what it is by recognition. That's what the value is of that intellectual property. Copyright is more about the expression of ideas. There's that old Onion. Anyone read The Onion? Old Onion article, Bill Gates patents zeros, ones. The joke being there's only 26 letters in the English language, that if you were to say there is going to be a finite combination of those 26 letters, someone is going to come up with the same idea that's been generated somewhere else. But the person who did it first should have claim to that. Recordings, software, writing. Usually in the United States, as soon as you create it, you own it. You own it. You don't have to put that C with the circle on. A lot of people believe that that is a copyright. You don't have to send it off to the government to be copyrighted. You don't need to get a lawyer to be copyrighted. All you have to do is create it. If you're the first user, you are it. You are the owner. What's the trick with that, though?
You need proof.
You need to be able to show that you beat somebody else to the punch, right? And there's many different ways of doing that. There's plenty of different ways of doing that as well. It's a weaker protection, but lasts a lot longer. To my good friends downstairs.
Walt.
What?
Walt.
Walt. What did Walt do? Or what did Walt's successors do about 10 years ago? When did Walt die? When did Walt invent the mouse? When was Steamboat Willie? It looked like the mouse was about to enter public domain. And Disney was terrified. They were afraid that everybody in the world was going to be able to market their own mouse ears, that they were going to be able to put it on t-shirts, that they were going to be able to make their own movies starring those lovable animated characters that they'd invested 100 years of goodwill and financing into. So what did they do?
Patent them.
Huh?
Patent them.
That would have been really cool. All cartoon mice belong to us. No, they weren't able to do that. They changed the law. They lobbied for the law to be changed. Copyright law got extended. I think it was 50 years. They kicked it out to 70 years. I think it's gone up to 120 years. Justification being that these copyrighted works are more enduring with our recording systems and whatever it was. Basically, they were afraid of losing their intellectual property, and they have a very, very powerful lobby, so they got the law changed. Copyright lasts for a long time. Yeah, good. Trade secrets. Trade secrets. I'm sorry, copyright. A couple of things you can't copyright, just for giggles. Cannot copyright a title. Any of us could make a movie called Star Wars. Any of us could write a book called Gone with the Wind. Just saying. Just putting that idea out there. Okay. Trade.
Acronym. You can't do an acronym, right? Because we have that problem here.
What's that?
You can't do an acronym?
No, because it's a title.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
It's search trademark, but it doesn't stand for anything anymore.
Again, the difference between search...
Or copyrighted.
No, it's trademark. It's a trademark. The difference between a trademark and a copyright, that's an excellent, excellent example. What's the difference between a trademark and a copyright?
Trademark's it's more related to branding.
Yeah, it's the visual. Me seeing those letters in that motif with that thing on the top, or having SEI with this graphic here, that's a trademark. I can never slap that on any slides that I want to sell or present to another institution unless I get permission to do so. The actual letters, if I want to put CERT on something, I can. C-E-R-T. It wouldn't be the CERT. I could never claim that the things were related, but I could use those letters again. Good, excellent point. Trade secret. Trade secret. This is usually something that, like it sounds, is kept private to an organization, and it's their business process. It's at the heart of what they do, and it gives them a competitive advantage, some way that they are distinct in the field. Unlike all the other forms of intellectual property protection, it's not known and it's not disclosed in legal proceedings. It doesn't come up in the court. You don't prove what it is by documenting it. Why not?
Because then it's no longer a secret.
Exactly. You lose this whole part of it. Exactly. Exactly. Can anyone think of a good example of something that falls into the category of trade secret?
Space shuttle, which was compromised.
Unfortunately, no. It was a government program, so there's no market viability there. It's supposed to be public domain. It was national security was their secret, and the Russians. Yeah, you're right. They ripped that off and made their own, didn't they? Good. What?
Formula for Coke.
Formula for Coke is the classic example. The classic example. What?
It's the classic example.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even going there, but yes. Okay, that's very good. Coincidentally,
New example, but
it didn't go over real well.
Oh, boo.
Bill Cosby wasn't able to sell it. Recently, in the past, I want to say 3 or 4 years, somebody tried to sell a formula for a certain particular kind of drink that Coke was going to make. Anybody remember this story? Vice President's secretary had access to his safe. Bad idea. That was the Vice President's fault. She got access to this formula of a new, I think it was a non-caffeinated sports drink that was going to be sold overseas. She took it home. Both her brother and her cousin had the great idea, hey, let's sell this to a competitor. We'll make lots of money. Lots of money is always a relative term. Does anyone know who they tried to sell it to and for how much?
Pepsi and 20 grand. Is that dead on?
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Andy, you get all the candy. That's just, I can't believe you did that. That was very, very good. Yeah. Where are they now?
Jail.
Federal prison. What did Pepsi do as soon as they got the phone call?
Called Coke.
Actually, that's probably not true.
Right before calling Coke.
They called the authorities.
Called the FBI.
Yeah.
Called the FBI right away. Why would Pepsi do that? Hey, they have the opportunity to beat Coke to the punch, so to speak. Why would they do that?
They want no dealings with that. It's bad blood between them. They don't want Coke doing the same thing to them.
They're not trying to copy Coke necessarily.
All these reasons, yes, spot on. It's going to cost them more if they get tagged later on than any possible value of winning this thing, right? It could have been a sting. It could have been the FBI setting them up. It's best to call the FBI right away and say, whoa, this deal's too good to be true, right? Yeah, good. Exactly. Cool. Unlike the rest, trade secret does not expire. How old is Coke? Long time now, right? Good. All right, questions on intellectual property legal protections. Import-export control. Because we do so much international business, because we become so dependent on it, because it's such a flourishing and lucrative thing, export controls have been relaxed. All right. There are still some export restrictions. Because we don't want rogue states to have easy access to those things. We want to force them to take first-class air travel and go to Japan so they can visit Japan Disney while they're there. Also, some encryption items that are specifically designed for military use are also restricted. And that's not just true in export markets, it's also true in a domestic market as well. What's a Harris triggerfish? It allows you to capture cell phone call data right out of the air from your closest cell tower. Can anyone buy them? No, you got to be law enforcement to get your hands on one of them. It's not illegal to have one, it's illegal to buy one. Transborder data flow. When you're taking part in a transaction, every step along the way, you are susceptible to the laws of that country. This is a great example right here. I go and I want to buy something from British eBay and the server's in Canada. I am susceptible to the laws of all three countries along that pathway. Can I ever be held liable for those things? Realistically, are they ever going to prosecute me? Yeah. Yeah. We did it. We did it to a British national flying from England to Costa Rica who had a layover in, I want to say, St. Louis. Anyone know what we busted him for? What he was doing was not illegal in England. It was illegal here. And users here were doing it. Anybody know what that was? Online gambling. Online gambling. He was a multimillionaire, actually. I'm trying to remember which gambling outfit it was. Brent, want to give it a shot? Google it. They met him at the layover, escorted him off the flight, and actually put him in jail. He was under our laws when our users were using his services, even though it wasn't illegal there. Licensing issues. Why don't we want to use unlicensed software?
Carruthers.
Carruthers?
David Carruthers.
Okay. And what was his gambling service?
BetOnSports.com.
BetOnSports.com. Yeah. Yep.
Also point out we can only get him because he was here.
Yeah.
Or Britain might be okay, but
We're still...
some nations would not give up their citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about
The
extradition.
hacking issue.
We can ask for extradition.
Right.
They might not cooperate depending on what they feel is going... They're supposed to. They're supposed to. Just because they don't recognize our laws doesn't mean... Just because their laws are different than ours doesn't mean they don't recognize our laws.
Right.
But sometimes we do. Have we ever gone and snatched somebody who broke a law that wasn't necessarily in an extradition country? Yeah. We've done that quite a bit. There was one, even prior to 9/11, the FBI went and snatched a confirmed terrorist from Pakistan. They actually sent a team to the hotel he was staying at, grabbed him, and dragged him home. Anyone remember what kind of hotel he was staying in? It was a Holiday Inn. I love that. That's like the best. He's an anti-American terrorist staying at the Holiday Inn. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Why don't we want to use unlicensed software instances in our environment? Huge liability. Huge liability. This could be a disaster in and of itself. If you were given a cease and desist and you had to remove all the operating systems or all the applications from your systems and start over from scratch, if you weren't allowed by the vendor to just pay a penalty and carry on, that could crush you. I mean, could you imagine trying to rebuild your entire network from scratch overnight? Be next to impossible. And there's criminal prosecution as well. Anyone ever been busted by the RIAA for downloading music illegally? I've had 4 students who have been. 2 in middle school, high school, and 2 in community college. I have not taught a lot of classes. I mean, I'm not like, Richard Dreyfuss in Mr. Holland's Opus. I've only probably had over the years maybe 1,000 students tops. For 4 to pop up, that's a pretty significant number. It says to me that the RIAA is going about making examples. It wasn't a lot of money. It was between $2,000 and $6,000 per settlement per student, but it's enough that it was a pain in the neck for them and their families, and that they're willing to stand up in the class and tell those stories. It's probably a pretty good fear factor in terms of marketing for the RIAA. Lots of different types of licenses, and each kind of software can be different. Somebody name a type of license that's out there right now?
Creative Commons.
Creative Commons, one of the most popular right now. And of Creative Commons, there's like a subset of like another 8, right? Yep. What's good about Creative Commons?
It's really good for protecting the rights of the owner for you. I mean, it sets very much, you can set and make it obvious in there what's allowed, what's not allowed, if they have to come ask you for permission first.
It's customizable.
Yeah.
Yeah. From a creator standpoint,
And it's spelt out easily.
yes, it allows them to tailor it in such a way that their end goals are met. What else is good about it? Quite often, you put Creative Commons on something that you want people to use. You're releasing it into a wild in a much more permissive state than you would if it was just your usual copyright. It encourages creative use. Anyone ever heard of Jonathan Colton? Singer? Does funny stuff? Sang Code Monkey? No? He released all his music into Creative Commons, allows people to make YouTube videos based on his music, allows people to re-record his music. He does it as a marketing thing to get his name out there. Obviously, it's not working that well, but yeah, he wants to encourage propagation of his identity. What's bad about Creative Commons? What's bad about Creative Commons? There's so many flavors, it's hard to know as a user necessarily what each one is going to be. Again, every single one is going to be different. Every way you want to use it is going to be different. Some of them say you can replicate this thing as much as you want, you can adapt it as much as you want, right up to the point you're using it for commercial use. What's commercial use? That's going to be so hard to decide. I mean, sometimes it's best to avoid using something. You're going to decrease the creativity you get out of it because you're afraid you're not going to be able to establish what those gray areas are. Has anyone ever read an entire EULA? Come on, don't you say I agree every time you... Yeah?
I had to for a security class.
I'm sorry, Gail. I would never do that to you. I would never do that to you. What's so painful about those things?
Legalese.
Legalese.
Who wrote them? Lawyers. Oh, man.
And they're not short either.
No.
No, they keep going. Why? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? Why is it so long? Why is it
specify everything?
Everything that could possibly in the world, in the event of alien invasion, this piece of software cannot be used for creating a virus to bring down the shield on the mothership before Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith nuke it, right? Those things become their own worst enemies because, again, people start to ignore them. And usage, going back to common law, the courts, after a while, do kind of acknowledge usage, common usage, as a standard. What's squatting? Not cyber squatting, but what's actual squatting on property?
Ooh, this is a whole field of common law that gets really goofy.
Yeah.
You essentially gain squatters' rights in a place and eventual ownership. If you're not paying to rent the space, you are using it,
yeah,
and you are improving it more than the person that actually owns the space.
And again, there's a whole bunch of different definitions of what that may or may not entail. But yeah, even if you don't own it, if you get to sit there long enough, you might be able to own it. And the courts recognize usage like that. If people continue to ignore these things because they become so cumbersome and so ridiculous, the courts may eventually say those don't really exist, or at least not in the intent that you say they do. For right now, they are enforcing them. For right now, they recognize banners, even though people just click right through on banners. I agree, continue, whatever. The court still says, by clicking, you have agreed to it. So for now, that is the case.
I think they're going to go very quickly through, like the way shrink wrap licenses went. You know, by opening this software, you acknowledge the EULA, even though you haven't read it or haven't had an opportunity. I think they're going to go that same way very quickly because most people don't read them.
No.
I mean, the common man doesn't. A prudent man wouldn't.
Who's got the time?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, I like to think I'm a law-abiding citizen. But realistically, if I did that for every game that I played, I'd still be reading the instructions to Skyrim as opposed to playing Skyrim, right? Yeah. Good. There is third-party software that you can install and run on your system to inspect and see if it's there. There is also third-party software or vendor software that can be run on your system and see if something unlicensed is there that are proprietary, that the vendors can use for an audit, that regulators can use, that law enforcement can use. Law enforcement has some really nifty tools. Anyone ever heard of Lantern? Or, I think, is it Predator or Raptor? The FBI has some really neat tools that can delve into areas that most people can't. Any questions about licensing, transported data flows, import, export, and the intellectual property legal protections.